the pagan origins of Christmas. Even the least informed Christians know that Jesus was not born December 25th, yet the enthusiasm with which Baptists and independent fundamental Baptists participate in this unbiblical holiday is baffling. This is further exacerbated by the fact that Christian haters, atheists, and other religions also celebrate this seasonal holiday with equal exuberance. Despite the fact that most Baptists and independent fundamental Baptists know that Christmas was adapted from a pagan holiday and first observed by the Roman Catholic Church, they find ways to justify incorporating it into their yearly schedule of formal holiday worship services. One often hears them say that by directing their worship to Christ and celebrating his birth, all pagan and Roman Catholic connections to Christmas are disannulled. This, of course, is complete nonsense. In Jeremiah, God says, "Learn not the way of the heathen." In other words, don't adapt heathen ways to the Baptist/biblical idea of acceptable worship. Yet Baptists and independent fundamental Baptists have redefined and perfected the Christmas celebration, turning it into one of the most important church days of the year, to the point that some churches put on huge pageants and entertainment-based Christmas events, disguised as church services. They justify this by saying, it's a great way to reach the unsaved by bringing them into the house of God, which raises the issue of whether or not the unsaved belong among the ecclesia. The scripture is clear that the church or ecclesia is a fellowship of believers, and unbelievers are not welcome. Rather, it is the role of the ecclesia to go out and reach the lost with the gospel message, and after they are saved, bring them into fellowship, but not before. Paul wrote, "Be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness? And what communion hath light with darkness? Wherefore come out from among them, and be ye separate, saith the Lord, and touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you." Thus, when Christians celebrate Christmas, they violate two essential aspects of biblical doctrine. One, they celebrate an unbiblical tradition borrowed from the Catholic Church, and they learn, adapt, and practice the way of the heathen. Number two, when the unsaved are invited into church under the guise of a Christmas pageant or service, two similar commandments given to the Corinthians are violated. Don't fellowship with the unsaved, and be separate from them. Baptist and independent fundamental Baptists believe that an understanding God knows they are worshiping Him at Christmas, and not some pagan deity. Need I remind the reader that Cain's offering was rejected, even though his intention was good, and God rejected King Saul despite his noble reasons, and Uzzah was struck dead though his concern was honest. Disobeying with good intentions is a form of rebellion, and the scripture says, quote, "For rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft." Samuel's response to King Saul indicates that God demands obedience over sacrifice. Quote, "And Samuel said, Hath the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams." But what does the Catholic Church, the originator of Christ Mass, say about it? David J. Meyer of Last Trumpet Ministries, in his article titled "The True Meaning of Christmas," quotes the Catholic Encyclopedia, page 537. Quote, "In the Christian law, the supreme sacrifice is that of the Mass. The supreme act of worship consists essentially in an offering of a worthy victim, the offering made by a proper person as a priest, the destruction of the victim." In that same article, Myers writes, quote, "In essence, the Mass is the ceremonial slaying of Jesus Christ over and over, followed by the eating of His flesh and the drinking of His blood. The Mass is the death sacrifice, and the host is the victim. This is official Roman Catholic doctrine, and Christmas is a word that they invented. Again, I ask, what is so merry about the pain, bleeding, suffering, and death of Jesus Christ? I ask every Baptist and every independent fundamental Baptist, why reject all Catholic Masses except Christ Mass? Is Christ Mass any less of a Mass than any other Mass? I don't think so. If that is true, then why not adapt other Catholic Masses to suit Baptist and Independent Fundamental Baptist acceptable forms of worship? Why only the Christ Mass? It makes no sense. Let's go further back into the origins of the December 25th celebration that was assimilated into the Roman Catholic Church and later adapted and observed by Protestants and Baptists. Reverend Alexander Hislop wrote, "Long before the 4th century and long before the Christian era itself, a festival was celebrated among the heathen. At that precise time of year, in honor of the birth of the son of the Babylonian Queen of Heaven, and to swell the number of nominal adherents of Christianity, the same festival was adopted by the Roman Church, giving it only the name of Christ." Unquote. Hislop goes on to explain how even Tertullian, circa 230 AD, lamented the Christians' willingness to accommodate paganism by incorporating their pagan feasts, exchanging gifts, and attending banquets and sporting events. And he went so far as to commend the pagans for being faithful to their religion, unlike the Christians, and taking special care to adopt no solemnity from the Christians. Hislop documents the observance of the 25th of December year-end festival by pagans throughout Europe, Asia, the Middle East, and Egypt, proving that Christ Mass was originally a pagan festival is beyond all doubt. The time of the year and the ceremonies with which it is still celebrated prove its origin. Quote, "The candles in some parts of England lighted on Christmas Eve and used so long as the festive season lasts were equally lighted by the pagans on the eve of the festival of the Babylonian god to do honor to him, for it was one of the distinguishing peculiarities of his worship to have lighted wax candles on his altars. The Christmas tree, now so common among us, was equally common in pagan Rome and pagan Egypt. In Egypt, that tree was the palm tree. In Rome, it was the fir. The palm tree denoting the pagan Messiah as Baal Tamar. The fir tree referring to him as Baal Berith. The mother of Adonis, the sun god and great mediatorial divinity, was mystically said to have been changed into a tree, and when in that state, to have brought forth her divine son. If the mother was a tree, the son must have been recognized as the man branch. And this entirely accounts for the putting of the Yule log into the fire on Christmas Eve, and the appearance of the Christmas tree the next morning. On that note, again, I refer the reader to Jeremiah 10, verse 2 through 5. "Learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven. For the heathen are dismayed at them, for the customs of the people are vain. For one cutteth a tree out of the forest, the works of the hands of a workman with axe. They deck it with silver and gold, they fasten it with nails and hammers, that it move not. They are upright as the palm tree, but speak not." Christ Mass celebrating Baptists and Independent Fundamental Baptists typically dismiss Jeremiah's admonishment, insisting that it has nothing to do with Christ Mass or the Christmas tree. Yet historic records show that according to Hislop's documentation, that the very things described in Jeremiah fit to a T with the pagan celebrations in Egypt, Rome, and other parts of the known world. Furthermore, Hislop explains the relationship between Lady Day, celebrated March 25th, and Christmas Day, December 25th. He says, between the two, there are exactly 9 months. If then the false Messiah was conceived in March and born in December, can anyone for a moment believe that the conception and birth of the true Messiah can have so exactly synchronized? Not only to the month, but to the day. The thing is incredible. Lady Day and Christmas Day then are purely Babylonian. There can be no doubt then that the pagan festival of the winter solstice, in other words, Christmas, was held in honor of the birth of the Babylonian Messiah. I challenge all Baptists to examine the facts. 1. There are no Christ Mass holidays or related worship services described in the New Testament. Christ's birth was not December 25th. 2. The Bible commands against learning the ways of the heathen. The New Testament Church did not celebrate Christ Mass. Mass is a Roman Catholic rite of pagan origins. Celebrating Christ Mass violates Baptist distinctives.